So today I'm going to be talking about a couple different variations on the theme of not only applied peace innovation, but of course, compassion as well. And some of this comes from my interactions with the wonderful staff and faculty of Cal State East Bay, but also Stanford, specifically Dr. Doty's team at C-Care. So let's talk about this and dive straight into this. And let me just ask you a question. And this is really for the students, but this could be for our other varied guests. What got you into your discipline? What brought you to your subject area of expertise? What was it, ladies and gentlemen? What drew you into it? It could be psychology, it could be business, it could be anthropology, economics, it could be whatever you moved towards. But what was it? Do you remember? Was it mom? You're going to need a job. Can't sit here eating my Velveeta all day long, okay? It could be personal interests. It could be a wide range of things. I'm going to talk about one of these things and how it moves us towards our disciplines, but subsequently has an impact on our well-being and our preference for maintaining hierarchies in society, and subsequently how we can deal with these issues. So, what is social dominance orientation? How many of you have a strong preference for maintaining hierarchy in society? That sounds like a strange question to ask on a first date. Wouldn't you agree? Yes, I think so. Let's talk about this a little bit more. Oftentimes we think of people's preference for maintenance of hierarchy in terms of hierarchy attenuating, and people who are hierarchy attenuators tend to like very flat organizations. They tend to like disciplines that are very humanistic. So we're talking about the social sciences, humanities, arts, things of this sort. When we talk about hierarchy enhancing disciplines and people who prefer a type of pyramid-like environment, we're talking about different types of disciplines. Usually business, usually law, could be other kinds of power occupations. So when we think about this, we need to start thinking about the impact it subsequently has on us as students and as we move through our college years, your university life, and subsequently into our specific careers. So when we think about this, high levels of preference for hierarchy in society tends to be related to some things that we're really not too comfortable talking about. And anybody who's ever been my student knows that I love to talk about these things, and that's why they're always so uncomfortable. But that's okay. I promise I won't make it too tough. So this relates strongly to things like sexism, racism, as well as political economic conservatism. A couple other things that we know is that people who have a preference for maintaining hierarchies in society tend to be moving towards those disciplines that I was talking about and subsequently moving into organizations that prefer to maintain hierarchies in society. So what does this mean for us in terms of health? Well, we've had a bunch of great speakers come before me and talk about the benefits of compassion in relationship to health, but let's talk about the impact of things like social dominance orientation on health and well-being. So we know from research that we've been doing, not only here at Cal State East Bay, but also at Stanford, that high levels of SDO relates to low levels of compassion for others. Really, this should come as no surprise to anybody who's an econ major, or an economist for that matter, unless you're an enlightened one. It also increases level of fear of compassion, as Dr. Heineberg was talking about before, for others, from others, and for oneself. Have you ever been scared to give yourself some compassion? Did you ever think you were just too weak? These things are related strongly, significantly. It also relates to higher levels of depression, anxiety, and stress. We've already illustrated this in terms of some of the talks that have been given, but it, I think, deserves a little bit of a pause, and we should think about this. What are we doing? Where are we coming from? And how do our disciplines provide us with the ideological background to impact how we perceive ourselves and subsequently shortchange ourselves and those around us, not only from a compassion-based perspective, but also from a health-based perspective. Interestingly, and this really should come as no surprise for those of us who are statistically oriented, all of the above are significantly partially mediated by adherence to free market ideology. So I always am stuck in a difficult position of bringing these things to bear. And ladies and gentlemen, I am fun at cocktail parties, but it takes a while to get there. Okay, we have to work through the data, so I promise we'll get there, okay? So let's talk about all of this in relationship to corporate social responsibility, which is a very hot topic, which is rightfully so. Businesses have a place in society. Businesses impact society. They impact their constituents. So what is the relationship between social dominance orientation and adherence to various components of corporate social responsibility? Well, what do we know? We know that higher levels of social dominance orientation, remember, preference for maintenance of hierarchies, tends to relate to negative ecological policy adherence, negative relationship with government regulation of business, negative relationship with philanthropy, negative relationship with obligation to the public, as well as a positive relation to materialistic greed. So again, there are broad ways of looking at this and to look at these from data-driven perspectives. So let's dive in a little bit further. As some of our speakers have spoken previously, where do we spend the majority of our time as working adults? Well, work, right? So we need to think about how this is going to impact our constituents, either in terms of employees that we're working with subordinates, or with managers. So let's dive into this and think about ways that we can actually impact organizations from a compassion-based perspective. Before we do that and look at one approach, let's talk about defining compassion, because we've heard a couple of different definitions. I specifically define this as observing suffering, actually having an empathetic response to this, and then taking steps to ameliorate the suffering. Okay? So moving forward, obviously we see compassion consistently across the board. I will actually give you a demonstration of where compassion is on this very campus in just a short moment. But we see this all the time. However, it's not made very salient. Did somebody hold the door for you today as you came in here? Did somebody share something with you today at any point in time? I think so. We don't pay very close attention to it. And we frame our lives consistently with negativity. I don't know, do you watch the news? You're framing your reality with negativity. So let's move from there. Compassion obviously is absolutely critical for success of organizations from a host of different perspectives, because it engenders trust in organizations, positive emotions, it increases the quality of interpersonal connections, and a host of other perspectives. Most importantly, reducing stress. And when we think about stress, we're talking about the #1 workers' compensation claim in the United States, something that becomes very expensive for organizations across the board. So you can look at it as a positive circumstance or as a cost to organizations. Whatever the case is there are tools that are already in place that can be leveraged to actually impact compassion in the workplace. Let's talk about one, specifically mentoring. Before we go into a specific example of this, let's talk about outcomes associated with mentoring. Have you ever been mentored, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, excellent. You remember the benefits. Some of you may have had a poor mentor. And when by poor, I don't mean like a Cal State faculty member. Poor meaning somebody who is not maybe that good, okay? So, sorry about that. The point is that we know what mentoring outcomes are. We know exactly what should be happening. There's been a lot of research done on this. And what do we know? Protégés have more satisfaction, career mobility, recognition. They move a lot faster through the organization than people who are not mentored. What do we know about mentors? It feels good to share with people. That's why I've benefited so much from some of my connections and some of the great people that I work with at C-Care. They have greater career satisfaction, a better sense of fulfillment, and understanding experiences. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Now we have a world that's been turned on its head, with young people oftentimes knowing more about technology and different approaches than their seniors do, which is really great because at age 27, I'm able to help lots of other people. It's wonderful. The other component here is that recent reviews of helping behavior shows that there are other consequences that are truly beneficial for the mentor and the protege in the circumstance. Lower levels of depression, experiencing greater personal happiness, life satisfaction, as well as self-esteem. So these benefits manifest even with evil mentors. And if you don't think they exist, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, you're wrong. Obviously, every Darth Vader needs an emperor. Okay, they don't get their evil skills out of nowhere. They actually have to take time to develop them. Okay, so bearing that in mind, I haven't had any evil mentors teach me how to do these things, but we've leveraged technology and the science behind mentoring as well as compassion to facilitate the creation of a variety of interventions, some of which Dr. Heineberg was talking about before. One is Clear Mentor, and this is a program that facilitates the ability to not only psychometrically match protégés with mentors based on experiences, so they'll be better mentors, not poor mentors. And they'll also be driving the mentorship experience by virtue of a wide range, let me see if I can get this laser going, there we go, of outcomes. So this is one of my students from Villahermosa, Mexico, and she's obviously my protege. And here you'll see a wide range of outcomes that drive mentorship in the mentorship literature, not only in terms of career outcomes, but also psychosocial outcomes. Because when you think about it, a good mentor is somebody who actually facilitates the transition from one stage of your life to another. A good mentor is somebody who recognizes suffering in a young employee or a college student and facilitates that transition to a better place for them, not only psychologically, but also in terms of their career. You can also, in this system, facilitate sharing this kind of information across a series of different networks. For example, LinkedIn, also Facebook. You can see she was so excited, she decided to resort to the Pointer Sisters over here. And also in Twitter, my hacked Spanish over there. I apologize for that. I'm working on it. A couple other things we do is we don't make the assumption that people are interpersonally skilled, so we make sure to provide them with all kinds of leverage to ensure a positive mentoring experience. We give them assignments. These assignments are the kinds of things you would see in any kind of good, positive, informational interview. So people have the support they need to actually make a difference. These are very structured interventions, but they're also very open-ended, so you can have multiple mentors, and the outcomes will be different, and the protege will learn every time. Here's a mentor assignment. It broadens questions, asks deep questions. Why are you interested in doing what you're doing? Why are you pursuing this career? Will it meet your needs? Okay? We have a leaderboard, of course, to ensure that people are able to identify who the top mentor is and then feel terrible about themselves and strive harder to be better mentors. Isn't that terrible? It's wonderful, but it's terrible. You can also compare organizations. And in this way, you know, Cal State East Bay can compete with Stanford. We can be nicer. We can be better mentors. We can use something that's seemingly intangible to actually, you know, compete in a very positive way, if that makes sense. So we measure impact through a host of different ways, like jobs, resume reviews, financial returns, etc. But I want to show you one other component that facilitates the measurement of compassion in different environments, because we see suffering all the time. All of you are on a college campus right now, a university campus. I'm not saying that this is a hub of suffering. I'm merely saying that students sometimes are going through difficult times. So obviously we see negativity around us on a daily basis, whether that's in the news or whether that's through the difficulties of the things we're dealing with. We know that a healthy climate on campus is very predictive of a wide range of things, like GPA, like whether students are going to give back to the Alumni Association. This is going to be predictive of a wide range of things that are also associated with accreditation, and that's why people use things like student climate surveys. So we know that also healthy outcomes have huge positive impacts for minority students as well as minority faculty. So something that we should be deeply interested in. I decided to go ahead and start mapping student climate, actually really compassion, because when you look at student climate surveys, what are they? Pro-social variables that map extremely well with compassion. So by going through a series of different surveys, I was able to pluck variables that matched very well with the things that we're talking about all today in terms of compassion. I asked my students to go ahead and witness pro-social behavior. So today, you walk outside, you see somebody sharing something with somebody, you see somebody mentoring somebody, you see intergroup activity or multi-ethnic collaboration. These are things that you find in student climate surveys. So the premise of this is based on a concept that was brought up a little bit earlier called elevation. And elevation refers to that positive emotion you feel when you're seeing something positive around you and subsequently want to do something about it. You've been to a good movie, you felt that warmth in your chest, and you felt like, oh, I'm going to hold the door open a little bit longer for somebody else. I'm going to share my popcorn with a complete stranger. I'm going to buy somebody a drink after this presentation. That's an invitation for you to be compassionate with me. The point is, I sent these people out. They went out, they started mapping these things. I was also collecting data. I was collecting data on compassion, and we found that the students who participated in this compared to a control group had significantly higher levels of compassion for others. They also had higher levels of psychological flourishing. This is a state where they're really engaging their environment far more. The interesting thing is it also mitigated the normative kind of stress, anxiety, and depression that students feel over the course of a quarter. So think about it. When people start their quarter, they feel pretty happy, and then what happens is they find out that they're doing worse in their class. They become more anxious, depressed, and stressed. In this circumstance, the intervention mitigated this completely. A nice kind of finding. So let's take a peek at this really quick. I wanted to say before I show you this, we're going to be launching this across U.S. universities this fall through CCARE and through the Charter of Compassion, happily. This is the Bay Area, and these dots represent pro-social behavior. I told my students to map compassion and pro-social behavior at Cal State East Bay. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, that is not Cal State East Bay. That's the entire Bay Area. They couldn't stop themselves because they enjoyed it so much. Let's dive in a little bit deeper. This is our campus. You see, it's a flood of pro-social behavior. Let's go in a little bit further and take a look at one of these circumstances. You click on one of these dots. People have the opportunity to pin these things using their phones, their mobile phones. They could use the web as well. This is students caring for each other. And we look a little bit closer, you can see that this was a circumstance where there was a classmate who was sick and another student left the classroom just to make sure that they actually felt well. So we're seeing this having a tangible effect at the qualitative level, but the quantitative level is clear as day as well. And this is just a fun kind of exercise to do. This is a way to get people hooked on seeing what's already around them anyways. Does this make sense? Good. So, number one, let me thank you again, and let me thank you all for coming. This has been phenomenal. Let me go ahead and share about some other great projects we're working on transparency and compassion in banking with Bruce Kahane, another one of our fantastic speakers, so we'll see him in a little bit. We're also working on a praise scale that looks at who praises. We know the impact of praise on others, but we don't know a lot about who is actually giving the praise. And that's with Matthew Feinberg, a postdoc at CCARE, and Emma Seppala, who spoke earlier, the associate director of CCARE. Also working on self-affirmation and behavioral tracking with that good-looking young man over there who I slipped a 20 to give me, props earlier. Yotam Heineberg. Also working on the pro-social mapping with CCARE, and finally working with a Swedish consortium for competence and organizational compassion. And I'll be working on some of that with a wide group of Swedish organizations over the course of the summer. So I really appreciate you being here. Don't ever hesitate to talk to me. I know most of my students try to avoid me when they see me walking through the halls, but I'd be delighted to talk to you at any point in time. So thank you very much.